Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another episode of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me on the other side over there is James Tiberius Fox. How are you?
What's going on, man? How are you?
What? I'm just. It's been a real interesting week, and Winston Salem, is done for the year. So that's one less team for me to cut up
Yeah.
highlights for. So we're coming down to the wire here. And, we got some playoffs starting for the Cannonballers. And we got last regular, I think is this the last regular season week for the Barons?
The Barons, yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and then we got another couple of weeks for the Knights. So, yeah, season's winding down, and all sorts of personnel moves are going on. And I guess that's where we'll start. White Sox Twitter whipping boy, international scout headmaster Marco Patti has been relieved of his role with the White Sox. What do you got to say about that?
Assistant to the general manager, international operations. Same title as Jim Thome. Much more important job, though.
Much more.
Yeah. So, I think we kind of knew this was coming. I mean, I think we'd both kind of heard some things. I think it's a little frustrating that just like it sounds like, again, money is involved in a Jerry Reinsdorf organization. I think Marco Patti was either out of contract or running out of contract. So then this is like, oh, okay, yeah, you can hire someone. Like, I don't think Chris Getz woke up last week and decided they need to get more out of their international operations. I'm pretty sure he knew like when he took over, right? And you can't do everything right away, but it's like, I had heard about pro scouts that were guys that were basically like on the payroll doing nothing like before. So then you went like a full season with them still. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like this is how like this organization's run, and it's weird. And then I see, all the comments about how like, oh yeah, that's great, but the guy that should really be fired is Getz, and he should fire himself. Apparently, like I don't know. This whole thing is like nauseating. I think because of the way that we've kind of approached the season and like this whole thing, right? Like, us like two Chris Getz fanboys, right here on this podcast, apparently want to see how this thing plays out. I like what is I don't know what the man's supposed to do. Like, everybody hates their acquisitions, but then people were like upset that they fired pro scouts. Well, if you hate the trades Chris Getz makes, then you should be okay with them getting rid of pro scouts, because that's what pro scouts do. They scout the minor leagues and tell you who to get in trade returns.
Yeah. So actually, you know what? I'm going to call an audible on the schedule here since you're talking about this. People being upset with Chris Getz. I'm going to bring up this quote from today that has kind of, I don't know, not necessarily. I don't think it's really changed anybody's opinions on Chris Getz. I don't think there was anybody that was pro Chris Getz that hears this quote and says, you know what? Let's get rid of him now after I hear this quote. And so the quote goes, if you would have told me we were going to end up flirting with the record, I would have been a little surprised, Getz said Monday. Now, if you would have told me prior to the year that we would have ended up with over 100 losses, 105, 110, I wouldn't have been as surprised. So he's not surprised if they would have lost 100 to 110. The only comment that I really have on this is that with all of the smoke that was being blown about the improved defense, about how they were going to do the right thing every time, and they were going to be competitive, if he thought that they were going to lose 100 to 110 or wasn't going to be surprised if it happened, it just kind of takes away from the positivity at the beginning of the season a little bit from me, saying that he knew what they were up against.
Well, and if you think that you had a chance to win 62 games, like what does that say about your projection models and your analytics staff? If you really win 30 instead, like, I mean, it's a big, I mean, even like 50 and 60 is like a big, 100 losses and 110 losses is a big deal. How about 125? Like, it's crazy. So I do think people have conflated like the Reinsdorf quotes and the Getz quotes, and there's nothing he can do about that. I mean, look, they could fire Chris Getz tomorrow and clean house, and I'd be totally fine with it.
Yeah.
Like they're just not going to do that, and I don't feel like I should stop following the team, and I refuse to just be miserable every day. Like I'll just tune out of the big league product for, you know what I mean? Like I just like don't like I like frequent message boards and talk to people, and people are so angry, and like I get it, but like I just like don't want to spend my time angry like all day. Like what like I'm not going to do that. So, I feel like people don't like it because they think I'm like defending. Yeah, like I mean I'm not defending anything, but I mean I'm glad they're going a different direction with the international department. I'm glad that they fired pro scouts if they felt like they weren't helping. I mean, like, did the White Sox have a long history of successful pro scouting that you could like point to? I
I
mean, like,
mean,
talking about here.
so I mean, like, when the pro scouts. So if you are new to this information and have not been paying attention, uh, longtime guy Billy Scherer's gone. Joe Sears, who I met in North Carolina, very nice gentleman, but he has also been let go. Bruce Benedict and Daraka Shahid had apparently left mid-season and was gone already, but he has
Yeah.
completely been removed of his role. There are there are some things that I feel like they did hit on a few guys now, but I think that the expectations for what these guys were when you're constantly, you know, just kind of skimming the water and taking the chum off the top. Like I don't understand what people were expecting these guys to necessarily provide to the team. Is my only retort to saying that the pro scouting was bad. I'm sure that every single one of them said, yes, we should sign Bryce Harper,
Right.
but if they don't open the checkbook, they don't open the checkbook.
Yeah,
You know?
like we have $2.5 million to spend on a lefty reliever. Who should we sign? I mean, you're very likely going to be wrong because it's
I
two and a
mean,
half million dollars. You're like taking a
and it's a
flyer.
year to year thing, like we all know, and I know that it's a cliche that you can't trust a reliever from year to year because it's so volatile between year to year. But I mean, realistically, like when you are going to sign a guy for $4 million, what are you expecting them to be able to find? I mean, the fact that they hit on even 20% of these guys is, to me, is not bad. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, like we can quibble with the Fetty trade return, but like that worked. Like Tommy Pham was fine for a little while. Robbie Grossman like brought you back something. Paul DeYoung brought you back something. I mean, the pitching moves like don't look very good, but I mean, it's very little money.
Yeah.
Like who's the left? Tim Hill was bad, and John Brebbia was bad and unlucky. Like it's just kind of and like stuff around the edges, right? I think there's some moves like if you wanted him to keep a Romy Gonzalez or there were like a couple of bullpen arms who who's the there's like an analytics darling that's like with the Marlins, I think that there's
Oh, Declan Cronin.
yeah, Declan Cronin, right? Like there's people that were big fans of his and they let him go and he could be in their bullpen right now.
Yeah.
So that's not great. And it's like part of the roster churn of your team, but like it's not going to stop anytime soon. Like this is,
Yeah.
and I think at this point, like, I've kind of said like the international scouting, whatever, the director and a hitting director and the manager and that sort of thing. Like those are your next moves that like tell you whether like I don't know that Chris Getz is going to make the right decisions, but I think he's like watching the same product we are. I think he knows like he took over an organization that needs like a lot of things, and he's like trying to do that now. If they don't draft well and they don't acquire good players, like it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we just don't have enough information yet.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is that I know that Chris Getz sees how the team is performing. He sees that it needs to be fixed. What I don't know is if he'll have any of the answers on how to fix it or be successful in his attempts to fix it.
Yeah, no, I know, and they go to make a Garrett Crochet trade this offseason, like it's not going to be these 4 scouts like evaluations, obviously. Now, they have Gene Watson. My guess is he will revamp the department a little bit, like underneath him, because this is like a little bit tongue in cheek, maybe, but like I think firing 4 pro scouts, I think that's half their department.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
they're going to need some more guys. There's lots of teams. I don't know if you read Bob Nightingale this week. Like the Cubs are getting rid of all their pro scouts above like rookie and DSL.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that would. You just like look at the analytics data and like watch games like you or what? Like,
well, that's like that's kind of what's been mentioned is that they're going to be doing a lot of this pro scouting via TrackMan data and by watching some footage on these guys. Apparently, they're going to be doing it all remotely instead of sending guys out in the field to go see these guys. And I mean, a lot of teams are doing it. So I don't know if that's the direction that the White Sox are going in. All I can hope is that, that the guys that they pick up are competent and the decisions that are made on the pro personnel side about who to sign, if the scouts are good, I hope that information's followed, because
right,
I
like
don't know that necessarily was the way when Hahn and Williams were around.
no, and I think I would personally lean the other way, right? I would hire the pro scouts that teams are firing and have more people on the, and you just have to be able to decipher information more, right? Like,
Yeah.
There's no reason like you're cutting money at the big league level, and if you had 8 pro scouts before and you fired 4, like go to 12, right? And just pay those people for their reports, and if the reports aren't good, then like you get rid of people, but at least it's like I just think more information is good. I think eyes on players is good. The White Sox are not smart enough to do that sort of thing remotely. At least I don't think so. So I guess one like it's not a red flag, but I've seen it mentioned a couple of places where, as far as like the international department, like they've talked about like a shake up or like and like there's been mention of like staying internal. That makes no sense to me. I don't think there's anybody in the building qualified to do that job. Now, who knows, right? Maybe there's some amateur guy that's like a cross checker, right? That's like always had this like passion to scout the Dominican Republic, and like that's the guy, right? And we'll hear about that after if it happens. But like this is a perfect opportunity to go hire somebody, and like somebody good, like Oz Ocampo is the name everybody's kind of talked about. He was the Astros international director, signed all that pitching they have. He went to the Marlins as the assistant GM under Kim Ng. He's been fired in Miami just because they're shaking things up, right? So, like, if they hired Oz Ocampo, it'd be like great. But I mean, if they went and hired somebody's sitting director, I'm fine with that too, or somebody's assistant director, like whatever, right? I think it's a job for a much younger man than Marco Patti at this point, and it's a perfect opportunity to go outside. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the facilities are important. It sounds like they're gonna like change out their facility. And the other thing to remember is like this will not affect January 2025, and it might not affect January 2026 all that much because players are kind of signed and agreed upon, right? So this is like a move for the future, like the next 5 to 10 years. And I'm hoping we get word of like just, they hired somebody from somewhere, and then we can dig into credentials after that.
Yeah. Just as an aside here, if you are not paying attention to the White Sox game, I suggest that you continue to not pay attention to it as they are currently in the clutches of a perfect game with 8 strikeouts through 5 innings. So not looking good.
Who is it? Who is it for Cleveland?
Joey Cantillo.
Okay. I think he was part of the, let me think, the Mike Clevenger trade. I wonder if I nailed that one. I think I did.
I don't remember. I remember him being part of a trade. I don't remember which one it was.
He was a Padre, so yeah.
Yes. Speaking of, like I have increasingly been hearing over the last couple of weeks that the Padres just can't develop pitching.
Yeah.
And I know I had mentioned it to you.
Yeah, they can't. Mm.
If you go and look at the guys that the Padres traded away and what they are doing now with their new clubs, woof. I
Dylan
mean,
Lesko
it
in
looks,
Tampa, Robbie Snelling with Miami,
yeah. And then there's
Mazer with Miami, right?
who's the other guy? The DSL guy.
Oh yeah.
He's
Well, there's one with the Nats too.
yeah.
The one with the Nats is insane. Harlan Susana. That was
Yes,
from the
Harlan
Soto trade.
Susana. He is living in the 100-mile-an-hour
Yeah,
area, not
yeah.
hitting 100. He is living in the
Well, and
100 mile
that
per
was like
hour area.
predicted about him when he signed. Like
Yeah,
that was a monster trade package. I mean, the only guy
yeah.
that didn't work out there was the one high school hitter. I can't remember
Dylan
now.
Head.
No, in the original Soto trade, um, and I can't
Oh,
I can't and I can't I can't remember now. But there was like a high schooler that went top 10 that was like a hit tool guy, and he just like hasn't really hit. But it'll
yeah.
come to me at some point, and then I could bring it up. But
So Doug asks, how much does a pro scout get paid? 60,000 plus expenses. They don't cost much, do they? No, they generally, depending obviously on experience and age. Usually they live like somewhere in between like 40 and 70, somewhere around there. So yeah, it's not super expensive, and having more of them seems like it should be an easy thing. If you're trying to find talent, having guys who are around the other teams all the time seems to make sense to me.
yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah. Um,
Robert Hassel is who I was thinking of.
Robert Hassel. Yes, yes, yes. He was
He's
supposed to
like
be
he was like,
a guy.
and he's not. But James
James
Wood,
Wood
Mackenzie
has
Gore,
turned out all right.
C.J. Abrams, and Charlotte Yarlin Susana. Pretty good
Yeah,
trade.
pretty stinking good. So moving along here, away from other teams and back to White Sox prospects. Colson Montgomery has been on a heater for the past week. In 6 games, he is 10 for 24 with 2 walks to 9 strikeouts with 3 home runs. He has a slash of 417, 444, 792. Your thoughts
Hopefully, it
on that?
continues. Have you read anything or seen anything about any sort of approach change, mechanical change, confidence change? I just, I think we've been waiting for this for just like a week, or all year for him to have a hot week. Because if he could do it for a few weeks, like maybe the numbers aren't so. You know what I mean? Like if he could finish with like a respectable WRC plus, you're like, okay, yeah, look what he did for the last month. Like he's fine.
Yeah, well, I will say this, and I'm hopeful that it continues. But I'm just going to throw this out there, and not to, pee in anybody's cornflakes here. But the Tides do not have a good rotation, and all the pitching that they have, they've been trying to use to fix the
Yeah,
pitching up in Baltimore, and obviously that hasn't gone very well either. So this could be a product of that. I'm hoping not.
yeah,
But if you look at his stats from like the weeks leading into this past series where he hit really, really well, you're looking at like 2 for 20 for
yeah,
a week. I mean,
right.
it's there's been some really rough weeks, and I'm hoping that he's on the other side of his struggles, but I'm gonna have to see it for a few more weeks. Now, something that we talked about off air and we talked with Jim Callis about was about this very situation, that if Colson Montgomery ends up going on a heater for the last couple of weeks of the night season, he said that he would still send Colson Montgomery back to Charlotte
Yeah.
next year. Your thoughts on that?
Well, and I think the other part of that too that's also important, and it fits my agenda because I'm like anti spring training stats, right? Like if he goes nuts in spring training, I would just you're not making the team, like you're going to Charlotte next year, and I want to see it, and then you're up and you're our shortstop forever, hopefully, right? But like, yeah, no, it's a tiny sample. It makes no sense. Like, I don't want to hear like, oh, Colson's gonna come to Arizona and try to win a job, like because it's just meaningless. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're either ready or you're not. And I just he hasn't earned his way to the big leagues. He hasn't. He like hasn't been good enough. So, like maybe like the fresh start could help. Like go back there next year, mash for a few weeks, and then by all means, like Colson Montgomery in Chicago would be. I'm like kind of glad that was the way Jim Callis said it, because it like makes a lot of sense to me.
Yep, agreed. So among other news, today it came out. We had been talking about here about Grant Taylor being named to the Arizona Fall League roster. And James Fegan on Twitter threw out some other names. One other one that we had talked about is actually a couple that you and I have talked about, being Sean Burke and Peyton Paulette being guys that are going there. The other pitchers being Anthony Hoopy Tuionatoa and Andrew Dahlquist making an appearance there. So let's go through the pitchers here. Grant Taylor only threw 19.1 before he got that lat injury, which was a slight aggravation from what we heard, and that they were just going to baby him on it. And he's been throwing in the Bridge League, pitching an inning here and there and striking out three guys, when he's going out and pitching. If you do not remember his results from when he was in A-ball, he had a 2.33 ERA, 0.72 whip, and a 32 K to 2 walk ratio, which is pretty stinking good. That'll be exciting to be able to see him throw. Hopefully, he is on the televised or streamed games for the Desert Dogs.
Yeah. I mean, what did Jim tell us? That he was going to be the best pitcher there, Grant Taylor? He might be the best pitcher in the Arizona Fall League. This is like one of the most interesting groups of guys for the White Sox in a while. You didn't even mention position players. Position players are very interesting too.
We'll get there. Yeah. There's so much to unpack on the pitcher side. I do think,
like, obviously, like, usually it's, especially with pitchers, right? Because pitchers get shut down, right? So it's usually pitcher injuries. Man decisions that are like important, right? Those are generally like the three categories, and I kind of feel like Grant Taylor and Sean Burke both still time, so that makes a lot of sense. I think Andrew Dahlquist, as a 2020 draftee, he's Rule 5 eligible. I'm not sure anybody's gonna pick him in a Rule 5 draft or anything, but this is like typically how the White Sox do these things. Like, they clearly think he has something if they're sending him there, like in a relief role. I love the Peyton Paulette move because I think he's just like fast tracked in a relief role. Like I think that's fine. So yeah, pretty interesting. Five pitchers, right? So
yeah. So just to fill you guys in on what's been going on with Sean Burke, he's at 71 innings. He's still got a couple of starts left here, coming down the wire to the end of their season. There will be no playoffs for them. They're getting, they're inching kind of closer to 500 at least. So that's a good thing. But he's got a 4.77 ERA with a 1.34 WHIP. 103 Ks to 41 walks, as everyone can remember. Like, one of the things that was something that we were definitely keen to watch was his walk ratio and see where he was at with that. And on the plus side of things, in the last month and a start, his WHIP has gone down, and the walks have also gone down. So whether or not that's a thing that's going to stay consistent, I can't say, but things have been looking better. Now, Peyton Paulette moved to the bullpen right as the calendar flipped over to July. And since July 5th, he's had 18 appearances. In those 18 appearances, he's thrown 35 and 2/3 innings. He has allowed 2 runs and has a 48 to 7 K to walk ratio. Been unbelievable out of the bullpen. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, like, it doesn't seem like a move back to the rotation makes any sense if you have a potential closer that's moving this quickly, right? It just might be his role.
Yeah, I mean, he just might have just found his spot, and that's where he's going to live, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with that.
Well, and they haven't made the Sean Burke move yet, right? He's still starting. I think they're still planning on him starting. But that transition could occur at any point as well, where they just decide, look, we have all these starters. We like you. We think you're valuable, but it's in a bullpen role where his stuff would really play up. I feel like. I mean, I feel like Sean Burke is what, high 90s with a nasty breaker like out of the bullpen. Maybe you could simplify things where it's less walks, but you know
Yeah, it's
they got a
possible for
they got a
sure.
lot of arms whose stuff I think improves like in the bullpen for sure.
Yeah. So Anthony Hoopy Tuanotona just got promoted up to AAA. So his I think his AAA numbers, I think he's got something like a 14.5 ERA. So not exactly great, but I think it was only in one appearance, if I remember correctly. He's got a 3.24 ERA with a 1.08 whip in AA and 23 to 8 K to walk, which is good. So Andrew Dahlquist, as you had mentioned, was a starter. Moved him exclusively to the bullpen this year, and he's got 45 innings in 3.2 ERA with a 1.33 WHIP. It's got 26 walks to 51 strikeouts. Better and definitely been useful this year. I don't know what to necessarily expect from him at this point. Like to me, it's looking like middle relief is probably in his future, but I don't know for sure. I got a question here from blank name. When will they move Eater to the pen?
I don't know. Same discussion though, right? I mean, it's a guy who starting just like hasn't worked. He's like losing velocity still, like as we speak, right? I think he's throwing 92 like in his starts, where he's probably 95 to 98 consistently in shorter stints with a nasty breaker. So, if that transition happens this offseason, I wouldn't be that surprised. He's 26 years old too, so can he help you in a relief role? Same kind of thing as Sean Burke, and I think there's some others in the system too. Back to Hoopy Tuanatoa, he's
Yeah.
also Rule 5 eligible, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so they need to see what they've got. Um, and if they're going to keep him on the 40 man. We've talked about this as well, as that we know that there's going to be a heck of a lot of churn on the 40 man this
Oh,
offseason.
there's some space, I think. Yes.
Well, yeah, and not including like these guys from the minors either, like on the 40, like that are on the
Yeah.
26 man roster, for crying out loud. Um,
See the comment from David about the second round miss?
yeah, I do.
So, like, look, in theory, like, I agree with this comment, and I've said it before. He said, so happy for Peyton Pallette, but a second round pick for a closer should be considered a miss, but good for him. Like, I, I think, like, you don't actively want to draft relievers in the second round, or like, like you take your closer in the second round. Like, that's a pretty valuable pick. But, Ian, I know you know this, man. Like, looking back at, like, White Sox second rounders historically, like if Peyton Pallette is a useful back end reliever in Chicago, it's like one of their best second round picks ever. Which
Yeah,
might be part of the problem, but I'm just trying. I just wanted to point that out.
yeah, no, that is definitely fair. Thank you, Beef. Appreciate it. Smash the like button, please. If you are not subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can get notified whenever we pop on for a show. So moving on to the position players, three guys were mentioned, and it's nice that Beeflope just happened to pop in here now. Tim Elko being the first one on that list. This year, between Birmingham and Charlotte, he's got a slash of 280 with a 334 OBP, 423 slugging. He's got 15 home runs, 21 doubles, and 137 hits, which is, that's, probably more than a lot of people expected. So I'm happy with that. Secondary guy, DJ Gladney, who can play basically almost anywhere other than second base and shortstop and catcher. I've seen him in all the outfield spots. They've had him playing left field, center field, and right field all year. He plays third base. He plays first base. He's got a slash of 244, 301, 440. He's got 14 home runs, 20 doubles, and 82 hits. He did miss, I think, about a month of time this year. So this gives him a little bit more time. And he might be Rule 5 eligible as well, I believe. So,
Yeah. Yes, he is. Because he's like a 2019 draft or so. Typically, the way it works is 4 Rule 5 drafts for a college guy and 5 for everybody else, like high school or international. So,
yes. Last on that list of positional players, Michael Turner, catcher for the Barons. So last year with the Dash, he was the Southern Atlantic League batting champ. This year, got bumped off a catcher because Edgar Carroll was there. So a lot more first base, which he played in college a lot. So it's not necessarily a thing, but he's been kind of bouncing between catcher, DH, and first base. So, like to me, I think that possibly upsets his, upsets his balance a little bit of how he was. His batting line this year is not anywhere close to where he was at last year. He's at 215, 321, 277. Now, he's never a power guy, so I never expected any slugging out of him. But you're looking at 2 home runs, 11 doubles, and 67 hits in pseudo limited time. He
yeah.
doesn't play every day. So,
And I think it makes sense, like, to like you're sending 5 pitchers to the Desert Dogs, like having their own catcher there to catch them, I think is helpful.
I thought the same thing. Yep. And like I've heard nothing but good things about him.
Yeah.
When somebody's been able to throw to him consistently. I've heard that he's good with calling a game, and I know that he's got a laser for an arm back there. So
yeah,
it's all good stuff.
I know a lot of these guys are like, like I don't know that DJ Gladney's a big leaguer. Like I'm sure we'll see Elko in the big leagues. We'll see how that goes. Michael Turner, what could maybe be like a third catcher at some point for somebody possibly. And these are bullpen arms. I don't want to. I don't know. Like Grant Taylor going to the Arizona Fall League is awesome because,
Yep.
and like even like Jim Callis is excited about. Pitchers this good don't typically go there because they usually throw a lot more innings than this. Teams are more cautious. I really think he could like burst onto the scene like if he pitches like he's pitched, right? And it could just be where he's like another top 100 guy that outlets are talking about, like after seeing him pitch there in Arizona.
Yep. I'm very interested to see what he does. And, obviously there's, as far as the pitching goes, there's a lot more project guys going there. There's a lot more throw anything at the wall and see if it sticks type guys. So I would not be surprised if the Desert Dogs have the best pitching staff in the Arizona Fall League this year, just from the guys that the White Sox are signing.
Well, they'll have Dodgers too, right? So, yeah,
which is always a thing.
Would not be a surprise. And I'm guessing Taylor and what teams send 2-star? I don't know. The White Sox sent 5 pitchers, so I don't know how many teams are sending 5 pitchers.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll find out once the rosters get announced.
And it should be soon if Fegan had it. So,
yeah. So Riku Nishida got called up to the Barons last week. Last week with Labor Day, so we did not do a show. I found out on Sunday early that he got bumped to AA. So this year he's been in 3 levels. His slash is 303, 418, 363. Obviously lower slugging numbers, which is to be expected out of a guy with a 5'6" frame, you would imagine, unless they're Jose Altuve. But his 6 games in AA, his slash is 346, 393, 246. So he has started off pretty hot. He's got 9 hits and 26 at bats with 2 walks and 3 stolen bases.
and no
No
strikeouts,
Ks.
no
Yeah.
Ks in 6 games. Yeah,
Yeah. Not bad.
so he's doing Riku Nishida things like in Double A.
Yes.
And
Yes,
this is
indeed.
not look. This isn't going to be some sort of impact guy, right? He doesn't impact the baseball that much, but he is certainly fun, and he's a pain in the ass guy. And you're watching the Cleveland Guardians, against the White Sox. This is like the type of guy that just is annoying. He's like the early 2000s Twins that would like bounce the ball off the Metrodome turf, and then they're at second. And then you
Yeah.
like throw a ball into center field, and they're up 1-0. And John Danks is angry. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks. So
Hitting it off the trash bag.
yeah,
So another guy that I wanted to bring up that's been doing some things and something like especially if somebody looks at our top 30 and then sees me tweeting out about Wilfred Veras and the fact that he's leading the Southern League in hits. And I don't have it up right now. I think he's got 24 doubles and
yeah,
he's got like a dozen home runs or so. Power production as far as home runs have gone has kind of been a little bit less this year. But just to clarify, the reason why he kind of dropped is because, we're seeing the holes in his swing and that's still a thing of concern. But
yeah.
he's still putting up some pretty impressive stats, and the fact that he's leading the Southern League in hits is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. Like I think the tough thing for me has always just kind of been like, what position does he play? Um, he doesn't walk, right? So if he's not going to walk, he's got to really hit for power. And he has power, right? But like a little bit more. Um, but yeah, he's a prospect. He's young. Can he moonlight in left field? That would be huge for him. Like if he could play left field, that's I think goes a long way for the profile of its first base DH. I mean, it just changes things a little bit. He's got to be really good with the bat then.
Yeah, I mean, personally, from what I've seen, I would rather he be in left field. He definitely has the arm to be productive in the outfield. They've put him in right field, and he's had quite a few assists from the outfield in right field. But obviously, um, I wouldn't say that that's the first place I would put him. I'd probably put him in left field if I was going to put him anywhere. If I had
Yeah.
my druthers, if you will.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, he should have the opportunity to be in Charlotte next year. So, good for him.
Yeah, that seems likely at this point. I don't see really. I don't know. There's going to be some turnover in the rosters down there as well. I think
Oh,
just
yes.
across the levels, and that's one thing that's always I know most people like complain about the the 40 man for the White Sox and how there wasn't enough roster churn there. Personally, like I look at the minor leagues and I say we're keeping some of these guys like a year or two too long. It's like
right.
if some of these guys aren't doing what you are projecting them to
Yeah.
do, cut bait. Like we don't need organizational filler for the full 5-6 years.
Well, and you're seeing it in the low minors right now. Like a lot of guys are getting cut early because I just kind of feel like the gap between rookie ball and low A is like bigger than it's ever been. And you can only keep so many guys. Like you're going to move everybody up from the DSL to Arizona because you have another DSL class coming, right? Well, if like those guys aren't ready to go to Kannapolis, like you see guys get cut. Like Alec mentioned Anthony Imhoff, who was a giant like 6'8" lefty, signed out of junior college, I think, like 2 years ago. And they very clearly think he's not going to be anything. I mean, he's another John Kazanis guy, like out of Arizona, out of the Triangle. So I think he was, I believe he and Matthias Lacombe were like the same year, basically. So last year's draft. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit early. But if they're releasing a guy like that, they clearly think he's like not going to be able to help. And he came in before Brian Bannister did. So, I assume any of these moves are, with his approval or otherwise. So
Yes, the approval of the pitching overlord,
yes.
uh, whether somebody's being let go or
Mhm.
not. Speaking of pitching, Hagen Smith was at the White Sox game today. to throw out the first pitch. And apparently watch them get a perfect game thrown against them because that's still going on. In case you were
Yeah,
wondering,
yeah.
um,
They let him throw 3 pitches before the game, and Nicky Lopez struck out. No,
come on now.
okay.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least he's free to be here next year, so we have that going for us.
Yeah.
So Hagen Smith, obviously, because he's there, has not reported to Birmingham, and we know he's not going to the Arizona Fall League because they're not going to stretch him out like that. So he is done for the year, and apparently he is celebrating with a nice steak at Steak 48 or
Apparently,
whatever.
that's
Yeah.
what I heard. Yeah, Steak 48 is pretty good. So yeah.
So he goes. He had 3 starts in Winston Salem. His last start was this last week. The first inning very good, 10 or 11 pitches. The second inning did not go as well. He's got 3 starts, 3.52 ERA with a 1.17 WHIP, 3 runs, 7 hits, 2 walks versus 7 Ks. Not completely dominant. But I don't, I really wasn't expecting complete dominance in advanced A after going through the long college season and the ramp up for the draft and all that stuff. And
Yeah,
wow,
I think. Yeah, like I know they didn't want him completely shutting down. I think he got enough work. I think he got his feet wet a little bit. We kind of talked about off stream, just like if this means anything as far as like where he starts next year. Like I think if they want to start him in Winston and he's too good, it's really easy to just go to Birmingham then rather than starting him in Birmingham. But I wouldn't be surprised by either. Like if they go right to the Barons, I'd be like, okay, like that's fine. But either way, I think he's a big part of what they're going to do next year. I mean, obviously he's different than Noah Schultz and Garrett Crochet because he threw like 100 innings this year, basically. He threw a ton at Arkansas, and then he threw 8 or so here. So, him and Noah Schultz could be on similar innings trajectories next season.
Yeah, so that's actually something that I wanted to bring up. I talked to you about it pre-stream here. Something that Kurt Bloom was talking about on the Barons broadcast was what they were going to plan on doing next year with Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz. And he was asking whether you think that Noah Schultz is going to come back to the Barons and get like 6-7 games under his belt where he's throwing a regular base of innings in a start instead of being limited to 4. And pairing him with Hagen Smith also in Birmingham. So you said that you wouldn't be surprised if he went back to Winston-Salem. I also would not, at least for the first couple of starts, to see how things go when he first gets ramped up. But your thoughts on the Noah Schultz thing and just in general?
Yeah, I think either way, like if he goes to Birmingham, it's fine. I think if they want to start him in Charlotte, it's fine. But I think the one thing they have to be careful of is like if he goes to Charlotte, right, and he's throwing these 5-inning starts and he's the best pitcher in the minor leagues, how long do you do it for, right? Like it's 8 starts and he is dominant in AAA and is one of the best pitchers in the minors. Like, do you feel pressure to like call him up at that point? Like I do think Noah Schultz, like he could pitch half of his innings load in Chicago, like whatever. Like I speculated 140, he's going to be right around 100. So could you go 40 more maybe? Like 140 with 60 to 70 in Chicago in 2025 makes a lot of sense to me. And like I understand the argument, like, hey, just like leave all these guys down like until you're closer to winning or whatever. But like he's gonna be ready. Like he's like one of the best pitchers in the minor leagues. Like there's no reason to not see that kid in Chicago, even if you're gonna lose 100 games next year.
Yeah. So question here from Alec. Do you think Batista and Gordon start in Birmingham?
I think it just kind of depends
On
on
who,
who
how
on
they shuffle it.
yeah, all the dominoes, like on who's where, right? I mean, Batista's still pretty young. Like if you want to go high A for Batista, I think that makes some sense. I think the big question is like how many of these young starters are still in the org, how many of them are in Charlotte, right? Because like they have a propensity to sign a bunch of veteran filler stopgap type guys in Charlotte, like for a reason. it's because you want 4A guys there, so you're not rushing prospects up. And your Chad Cools of the world and those type of guys. Like, so how many of those guys are you gonna sign? This year they were kind of able to keep all your top guys in Birmingham to start the year. I feel like next year we're in a place where they're not really going to be able to do that. So if the Kai Bushes and Mason Adams of the world and those guys are like not on the big league team, like that's part of your rotation in Charlotte. And then that kind of affects everything, the other way. But I will say there are enough starters in low A, just based on some Arizona guys and some guys there now and some of the draft picks that I think the question becomes high A or double, for guys like Gordon and Batista and those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole pitching thing, there's just so much pitching.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where any of them is going to land to start the season is pretty tough,
It is. Yeah.
It's hard to project because there are just so many guys and you don't know who they're going to hold back. You don't know what they're going to do in Charlotte as far as picking up guys. It was nice that through most of this year that they actually had a full starting staff through this entire year and aren't
instead of having
doing
two starters in Charlotte. Yeah, remember those days?
My gosh, man, that was brutal.
My goodness, because then you're signing like anybody that's like, hey, this player's been signed by the White Sox organization and he will start for the Charlotte Knights this evening.
Yeah, exactly. Paulette is starting Charlotte, you think, next year?
I don't know. It could be double. Yeah.
Could be.
The thing is, like with Peyton Paulette, like if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's a guy where like just go to Chicago.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, are very like, just jaded, upset, whatever. Like 2025 is not going to be great. It's not, and I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and tells you like it's going to be much better. I think it'll be more interesting to watch because I think your Colson Montgomerys and Edgar Carrows of the world are up. But I mean, look, if you're going to lose 100 games, but like there's some promise and you bring up a bunch of kids at the end of the year and like Peyton Paulette's your closer and you have some young starters that you like, you could realistically think like you'll be a lot better in 2026. So yeah, I think we start to see a lot of these guys. Where they start though, very dependent just kind of on how many veterans they want to stock there. We'll see, what, like I would love to have all prospects in Charlotte. That would be great, but it's not really the way that they operate. And it's really not feasible because like if you lose two outfielders, you don't want to rush an outfield prospect to the big leagues. Like you want to call up whoever, right? Like your veteran guy that you have there, like to get you through a week. So that's the reason why teams do it.
Yeah. So moving along here to the last couple of items of business here. So Sam Antonacci, drafted out of Coastal Carolina with the 5th round pick here by the White Sox, gets named as the Carolina League last player of the week of the year because they don't do it during the playoffs. So this last series, he just hit 458 with a 536 OBP and a 625 slugging.
Yeah. So this guy can really hit. He's too good for low A, obviously. We talked about him a lot during the draft. He was like the best player in junior college for 2 years at Heartland. Like his stats are absolutely insane. 23 games in Kannapolis, 333, 471, 432, 173 WRC plus, doesn't K, walks quite a bit. No power as of now, but he's kind of a pest, right? And I think he's going to be in Winston next year. We'll see whether it's a third base or second, but this is a guy that the White Sox scouting staff really, really likes. I think they just kind of like this profile in general. But it's not dissimilar to other guys that have made it up, right? Like your Brooks Baldwins of the world. Like it's, I think this guy's like hit tool's probably a little bit better and he's not as good as Brooks defensively. But yeah, 5th-round pick that they paid $550K to, which is like mid 4th-round money.
Yeah, I'm impressed, and from something that I did hear, um, was that when he was in junior college, if you look at his power numbers were a lot better in junior college, and you could say, well, that's because of the competition, but I have heard rumblings that his team relied on him to drive in runs a little bit more, so he swung with a little bit more bad intentions. Now, how true that is, I don't know, or what the results would be if that in fact is like a real thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, because we kind of talked about like his similarities to a guy like Mario Camaletti a little bit. But like I don't think Mario Camaletti could hit 16 homers in JUCO.
no,
I just don't, and it's just kind of so yeah, like was this guy the 3 hitter? And that's like what his job is, And I know he was a monster like in high school. He went to Springfield Sacred Heart Griffin, like downstate, So this is a guy that the White Sox had watched for for quite a bit. They really like him. I think he'll be interesting. He didn't crack our top 30, but we thought about it. Like I put him on mine. But
yeah,
back end for sure. And if he's a guy where, I don't know if he goes to instructional league or not and gets noticed or whatever, but I mean, I don't think A-ball is going to be much of a challenge for him. So we'll wait until we see him at Birmingham and see, kind of see what he is. I think we didn't plan on talking about this guy, but I think, Casey Saki has kind of held his own too in high A.
yeah.
Not great, but been fine. He's
Well, I mean,
he's got a couple of homers.
Yeah, I think the thing with him is it took him a little bit longer to get up to speed, but now that now that the season's over, the last like 3 or 4 games, it looked like he was starting to figure things out a little bit and was starting to hit the ball with a little bit more authority, and yeah, I mean he could be
and he played 24 games. Decent though. 110 WRC plus, 290, 333, 398. It's not too bad. Like after playing a full college season.
Yeah, no, I'm it's one of those things, we've been talking about it for a couple of years now, saying that the White Sox are doing a better job at evaluating talent that they're bringing into the system, and whether it just be a thing where it raises the floor of, the entire system.
Ooh, this is an Ian question. Yeah.
So it says we need to talk about the Ballers rotation and lineup looks like for the playoffs. 100% different team. Yeah, no, the thing about them is that they've been so picked over and had so much stuff sent to Winston-Salem. I mean, they've lost like their top bats numerous times throughout the season. Whether it be, their agitators like Riku Nishida, their Caden Connor, I mean, they've lost, Ryan Galaney lost him as well. I mean, they've lost a bunch of bats from that thing, and pretty good. So as far as their playoff rotation, going back from last week, I know that Brizuela is probably not in, is my guess. I would have to think that you're going to see Peppers for sure, I would think. And
then they're not. You think they start any of the draftees? Like, is Justin Sinibaldi get a start in Kannapolis for the playoffs?
Sinibaldi just started. He just started on Saturday.
Yeah.
So
big George Wolkow carrying him to a Carolina League title. Be nice.
Yeah, Wolko did not play yesterday. He had the day off. McDougal will definitely start one of the games. Who's mentioned in here? Sinibaldi got put on the developmental list. How do you like that?
So he's done.
that eliminates him. I don't think they're going to bump anybody back to get them extra innings, but I mean, stranger things have happened. I don't know. It's gonna one of those things where we won't know what the rotation is until I talk to Dan Haloti and find out.
Yeah, and then the lineup had some reinforcements in it, with Perez is there, right? So, and then like
Oh,
Gurevitz.
Makarevich? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great as an undrafted guy, like Antonacci's there. This is where you'd almost like to pull a fast one and send Saki down, but yeah, it's interesting. This team has looked so much different, like at multiple times throughout the season, because this is not the team that earned the playoff berth, it's like a
Yeah.
totally different roster.
Yeah. So they moved Frank Kelly Arias back to back into the bullpen, so he's not going to be starting. And Mogollon is not going to get promoted.
No, he'll be
Not during
he'll
the
be in
playoffs.
he'll be in Arizona and go to the fall instructional league. Same thing with Christian Opper, who was also asked about.
Yeah, I don't think any of those. You asked the question earlier, and I didn't answer it because none of those guys are getting promoted to the Cannonballers right now. I don't believe. I think that they are going to. If it didn't happen a few weeks ago, it's not going to happen now because they're not going to bring them into the playoffs as their first introduction to A-ball. I think that they probably at least, would think that they owe it to the players to not be playing with them like that, after they've worked hard to get into the playoffs and then go ahead and dump some new guys on them that haven't played yet. So
yeah, I think this is the team. Like the team that's there is like the team that's gonna play for sure.
I remember Lacombe got injured, right?
Yeah,
Matthias
there was
Lacombe?
like a lat issue in Arizona.
Yes.
I don't even know if he pitched this year, honestly. So he's, pretty behind. Like they like him, but you can't make the team in the tub, right? So
First French guy on the IL.
yeah, he wants to be
I'll
the
have to settle for that.
first French guy to make the majors. I don't know.
Yeah. So you got anything else pressing for this week? We do know that the White Sox are not going to get no hit or a perfect game against them tonight,
Oh,
so that's nice.
rats. Brian Ramos played tonight, right?
He did, yeah. He was 0 for 2 earlier. My kid turned on the 49ers and Jets, so I can't watch the White Sox struggle, which I don't blame him for turning them off because I probably would.
Yeah, 49ers Jets is probably a better idea, I would think. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the White Sox are playing out the string. I mean, obviously, I feel like we could have news on manager or international director or director of hitting or more front office moves like any day. Basically, it could just be like, oh yeah, this happened, and you're like, okay, great. I do think we'll talk AFL more extensively, like more extensively as it gets going. So yeah, I think the AFL is really fun, and I think the White Sox have some interesting players there. Because there's some years where like I would write a preview, and it's like really hard to finish writing the preview.
Snooze fest.
Yeah, and this year there's like some legit interesting guys. So that's actually
It's 2 years in a row.
It's kind of fun. Yeah,
2 years in a row that we've actually had guys, and I'm just like, whoa, all right. Nastrini out of the pen tonight. Look at that. Interesting.
Did he? Did they do that?
I don't know. That's what Alex saying. I don't know.
Well, he said Iriarte just came in too, so I don't know.
He did, yes. Yeah. So you're good for this. You're good for the week here.
I think so. We'll
Next
go.
Monday?
We'll go live next Monday and see if there's anything else pressing. How many? What? We'll know the fates of Kannapolis by then.
Yeah. The first their 3-game playoff series is this week. They're I think Thursday.
Yeah.
They're Wednesday or Thursday. They're at home.
And I'm sure you'll be putting probables on Twitter whenever we have them.
I will.
So,
yes. Yeah. I will. I should find out from Dan like what the rotation is going to be, but we'll see how that goes. All right. So FutureSox.net, you can find all of our written content, including the recently published today Trending on the Farm series by our guy Sleepy Harold. You can also find our midseason top 30 that we just released a few weeks ago. You can also find all of our other podcasts that are on the Future Sox Network, the Hot Takes and Heaters, and the Roundup with Elijah and Jeff. Still waiting to find out whether Hot Takes and Heaters is going to go on tomorrow night or not. I'm not 100% positive. We'll find out. But Future Sox on Twitter at Future Sox. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate your guys' time so much. Realize if you are listening to this in podcast form, where you can find it anywhere that you find your podcast, realize that we also do this on YouTube when we do this as well. Thank you much, Beefloaf. Appreciate that. You guys have a great week. Actually, I will be on the au jus with Beefloaf next
Nice.
Monday. So I'll be pulling a double next week. So going to be talking lots. But we appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming and spending your time with us. And we will talk to you guys next week. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send them over to us. We'll certainly entertain answering them. Yeah, I hope so. All right, we will talk soon. We appreciate you guys. Have a great night.